More than ever, infrastructure investors and project owners recognize the value of considering environmental, social, and governance risks when planning future projects. As a result, ESG standards are rapidly gaining popularity in the industry. In this video, we explore the business case for employing ESG standards for infrastructure projects.
In brief, the case rests on 3 points. The first is investor recognition. Because infrastructure investors increasingly recognize the importance of ESG risks, not considering them can adversely affect long-term asset values. The second is reliability. A variety of objective, reliable ESG standards now exist to meet the specific needs of individual projects. The third is ESG's applicability to due diligence. Using recognized international ESG standards can help attract investors to large projects in the developing world or in emerging markets. Infrastructure is durable. Paradoxically, however, its dependability creates significant risks for society when it fails. Climate change and other environmental risks pose fresh challenges for the world's infrastructure. Extreme temperatures, changing precipitation patterns, and more severe weather increase risks of fire, water shortages, floods, and storms. To combat this, sustainable and resilient infrastructure offers several overarching benefits. First, it is inclusive, defined as giving greater access to more groups and communities, and that means larger markets and more revenue. This inclusivity, in turn, helps drive public acceptance of infrastructure projects, which reduces the risk of project delay. Third, sustainable infrastructure is more resilient to shocks and stresses, which increases project life expectancy while reducing insurance costs. Last, these factors lead to improved long-term economic stability and growth, which results in higher asset values. In light of this, policymakers increasingly recognize the importance of sustainable infrastructure. For example, of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals for 2030, 5 are directly related to infrastructure, specifically those covering water, energy, sustainable growth, resilient infrastructure, and sustainable cities. These SDGs will affect business models in nearly every industry. In infrastructure, we expect them to change how projects are planned, financed, built, and operated. ESG has never been more visible. In January 2020, an investor letter by BlackRock CEO Larry Fink shook up the financial world by stating that, in BlackRock's view, climate change is fundamentally reshaping finance, and that this is compelling investors to reassess core assumptions about modern finance. In response, BlackRock plans to exit investments with high sustainability-related risks, such as thermal coal producers, while making sustainability integral to portfolio construction and risk management. Both institutional investors and individuals are paying attention. 72% of large investment funds are already incorporating ESG standards in their investment decisions. 85% of individual investors are interested in sustainable investing. And surveys of infrastructure investors show that they increasingly consider ESG risks as a first-order question. Increasing commitments are also reflected in the number of signatories to the United Nations Principles of Responsible Investing. Due to media coverage and investment fund outperformance, market journalists have even labeled ESG as an investment megatrend. Investment inflows in ESG funds doubled in 2019, and total ESG funds reached over 600 billion euros, 6 times the holdings from year-end 2015. ESG is also good for performance. A meta-analysis of over 2,000 studies of ESG performance published since 1970 found that the majority showed a positive relationship between ESG ratings and corporate financial performance. While this is not conclusive, it seems clear that ESG has no negative effect on risk-adjusted performance for any kind of asset. Investors, asset managers, and policymakers are increasingly seeking greater disclosure of ESG factors, as well as pushing companies to improve performance on ESG metrics.
This is complicated by the absence of uniform ESG standards, which leaves open the window for selective disclosures and corporate greenwashing, sometimes not from the intent to deceive, but rather due to the absence of clear standards.
On the flip side, there are many reliable international standards. The choice of which of those standards to apply depends on the needs of investors and project owners.
The first consideration is cost and time and complexity. For many infrastructure investors or project developers who are on the edge about adopting standards, these will be the main considerations. Standards need to fit into the investment process in a reasonable way. Excessive time, effort, and cost are anathema. On the flip side, however, is reputation. For developers seeking to attract international investors by applying a standard, choosing a standard based only on its speed or local acceptance is short-sighted. More rigor will not only help prove to investors that a project has done its homework, but ultimately help speed up the investment process by contributing to and accelerating due diligence. Related to this is how specific each standard is to a project's specific situation. For example, different standards have different balances among ESG factors. There are standards with a specific country or regional focus, and this is important for projects that mainly care about domestic investors or government approval. There's also the question of whether a standard focuses mainly on the investment stage or more on the development stage, and whether the standard focuses on ongoing performance versus one-time certification, such as during the design or construction phases. The point here is that on one hand, the lack of a single recognized international standard used for all infrastructure projects hinders the adoption of standards. But on the other hand, the wide choice enables investors and developers to employ a standard that is more suitable for the needs of an individual project or institutional strategy.
The advantages of international standards are clear. For project developers, standards offer early identification of potential causes of delay or showstoppers, improved reputation, demonstration of community acceptance, and better access to finance. For financiers, the advantages are identification and screening of investment opportunities, risk mitigation, and saving time on due diligence and ESG safeguards.
Given the enormous sums that will be required to meet the global demand for infrastructure and the close relationship between infrastructure and the economic and sustainable development goals of the developing world, it is critical that ESG be taken into account in planning and evaluating infrastructure.